The alarm screamed through the small sensor room like a wounded animal. Rilke's 4 arms moved across the control panels in practiced patterns, her 3 eyes blinking rapidly as she tried to make sense of what the screens were showing her. Numbers scrolled past faster than she could read them. Something was approaching Vigilance Eye Station, and it was moving at speeds that made her hearts race with fear. She had worked this job for 12 years, 12 long years of watching empty space for threats that never came. The most exciting thing she had ever detected was a rogue asteroid that passed 3 million kilometers away from the nearest inhabited planet. This was different. This was impossible. The sensor readings made no sense. Whatever was out there had been traveling at velocities that should have torn any known spacecraft apart. Now it was slowing down, but even its deceleration was wrong. Ships needed hours to safely reduce their speed. This thing was doing it in minutes. Rilke's primary hand reached for the communication panel. Her supervisor needed to see this immediately. Commander Gren would know what to do. He always did. The Murathi commander arrived in the sensor room looking annoyed at being disturbed during his evening meal. His gray skin had deepened to almost charcoal when he saw Rilke's expression. She had never called him for a false alarm before. "What am I looking at?" Gren asked, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had dealt with too many technical glitches. "A vessel, Commander. Origin point traces back to human territory. It entered our detection range 17 minutes ago." Rilke's tertiary hands continued working the controls while she spoke. "Current velocity suggests it will reach the Trellin border worlds in less than 3 hours." Gren's face shifted through several shades of concern. Humans had only joined the galactic community 40 years ago, and in that short time they had earned a reputation. They built ships that broke physics. They expanded into space with aggressive determination. They ignored council protocols whenever those rules seemed inconvenient. Other species whispered about them in worried tones. "Run a diagnostic on the sensor array. This has to be an error." Gren moved closer to the displays, his experienced eyes searching for the malfunction he was certain existed. Rilke had already run 3 diagnostics. All systems were functioning perfectly. "Commander, the readings are accurate. The vessel is real, and it's broadcasting a message on all standard frequencies." She played the transmission. A human voice speaking in the common galactic language with an accent that made some words sound sharp and others soft, filled the small room. The message was short, direct, terrifying in its simplicity. "We are coming, stand down." Gren felt his breath catch. Those 4 words carried implications that made his hands tremble slightly. Humans did not make empty threats. When they said they were coming, they meant it. When they told you to stand down, you had exactly 1 chance to comply. "Where exactly is it heading?" Gren already knew the answer but needed to hear it confirmed. "Hedros 7, the primary Trellin mining colony." Rilke's voice had gone quiet. "Commander, there are over 200,000 Trellins on that world, civilians, families." The Trellins were one of the most peaceful species in the Council. Their crystalline bodies moved slowly, thought carefully, and avoided conflict with determination bordering on obsession. They mined rare minerals and kept to themselves. They had no enemies. They had no military. They relied entirely on Council protection. Gren's mind raced through protocols and procedures. Council law required authorization before any military response. Authorization required notification of the Council Assembly. The Assembly needed to convene, debate, and vote. The entire process took a minimum of 2 weeks. They had less than 3 hours. "Send an emergency evacuation order to Hedros 7, Priority Alpha." Gren moved toward the main communication console. "And get me a direct line to the Council Assembly chambers. We need authorization for a defensive response." Rilke's eyes met his. They both knew that defensive authorization would arrive far too late. If this human vessel intended to attack the Trellin colony, nothing would stop it in time. The nearest Council fleet was 6 days away at maximum speed. She opened a new sensor window and began analyzing the approaching vessel in detail. What she found made her secondary heart skip a beat. "Commander, I have preliminary identification on the ship class." Gren turned, hoping for good news. The look on Rilke's face told him he would be disappointed. "It's a warship, heavy classification based on the energy signature and hull composition." Her tertiary hands pulled up comparison data from the military database. "Size suggests it carries enough firepower to devastate an entire planetary system." The room fell silent except for the constant hum of the sensor equipment. Gren stood frozen, processing the implications. A human warship approaching a defenseless Trellan colony, a message telling them to stand down. Every instinct screamed that this was the beginning of something terrible. "Can you identify the specific vessel?" he asked. Rilke worked the controls for several long seconds. The translation software processed the human naming conventions and converted them into galactic standard text. When the name appeared on the screen, both of them stared at it with growing dread. The ship was called Retribution. Gren had studied enough human culture to understand what that word meant. Humans used it when they sought to punish someone, when they demanded payment for wrongs committed, when they came to balance scales that had been tipped unfairly. What did the Trellans do to anger the humans? Rilke's question hung in the air like smoke. Gren had no answer. As far as he knew, Trellans and humans had barely interacted. A few trade requests that went nowhere. Some minor diplomatic exchanges, nothing that would justify this kind of response. Unless something had happened that the Council did not know about. Unless there were secrets hiding in the peaceful Trellan colonies. Unless the humans knew something that everyone else had missed. The alarm continued its relentless screaming as the human warship Retribution closed the distance to Hedros 7. Gren started sending emergency messages in every direction, knowing they would arrive too late. Rilke watched her sensors and counted down the time until the humans arrived. 2 hours and 43 minutes remaining. The galaxy was about to change, and nobody was ready for it. Governor Pila's crystalline hands shook as she read the evacuation warning for the third time. The message from Vigilance Eye made no sense. Humans had no reason to come to Hedros 7. Her people had done nothing to provoke them. They mined minerals, raised their offspring, and lived quiet lives far from galactic politics. Yet the sensors did not lie. A human warship was approaching, and it carried a name that promised violence. Her aide Temis entered the governor's office with his usual shuffling gait. Trellans moved slowly. By nature, their crystalline bodies requiring careful balance with each step. This made evacuation nearly impossible. They could not simply run to transport ships and flee. Every movement needed to be calculated. Every step took time they did not have. "Governor, the evacuation coordinator reports that we can move perhaps 30,000 people in 3 hours. That leaves 170,000 with nowhere to go." Temis spoke in the measured tones typical of their species, but Pila could hear the fear underneath. "Contact the council delegation. Demand immediate military protection." Pila stood and moved toward the window overlooking the mining district. Thousands of Trellans worked below, unaware that death might be approaching from the stars. Temis worked the communication console with practiced efficiency. It took several minutes to reach Ambassador Querelle, the Scythian diplomat responsible for overseeing Trellan affairs. When his face appeared on the screen, he looked bothered by the interruption. "Governor Pila, I am aware of the situation. The Council is dispatching a fleet to your location." Querelle's voice carried the smooth confidence of someone who had never faced real danger. "When will they arrive?" Pila already knew the answer would not help. 6 days, perhaps 5 if they push their engines beyond safe parameters. The human ship arrives in less than 3 hours. Querelle's expression showed mild concern, as if discussing a scheduling conflict rather than potential genocide. "The Council operates according to proper procedures, Governor. We cannot simply rush military forces into situations without appropriate authorization and planning." Pila felt rage building in her chest, a rare emotion for a Trellan. Ambassador, there are 200,000 civilians on this world. Children, families. If the humans attack, we have no defense. I am certain the humans will see reason once our fleet arrives. In the meantime, I suggest you attempt diplomatic contact with the approaching vessel. Querelle disconnected before Pila could respond. She turned to Temis with frustration burning through her usual calm demeanor. The Council abandons us. Send a message to the human ship. Ask them what they want, why they are coming here. Temis began composing the message when something caught his attention on a secondary screen. Governor, I am finding something unusual in our data. Archives. What kind of unusual? 3 weeks ago, someone sent a distress signal from our outer system. It was not from any Trellan vessel. Temis pulled up the archived data and began analyzing it. The signal was intercepted before it reached our main communication hub. Someone buried it deliberately. Pila moved closer to examine the information. The distress signal had originated from a small research vessel. The ship's identification marked it as human. A science team studying stellar phenomena in the outer reaches of the Hedros system had been attacked by unknown assailants. Why would someone hide this? Pila asked, though she was beginning to understand. Temis dug deeper into the archives, his analytical mind piecing together fragments of information. Governor, for the past 8 months, there have been irregular traffic patterns near our fourth moon, ships entering and leaving without proper identification. Our security system logged them as authorized Council vessels. But they were not Council vessels. No, Governor, I believe they were pirates. The word hung in the air like poison. Pirates operated in the lawless regions between civilized space, preying on the weak and hiding from authorities. If they had been using Trellan space as a base, it meant someone in the Trellan government had been paid to look the other way. Pila felt sick. Her people prided themselves on honesty and integrity. The thought that corruption had infected their administration was almost as terrible as the approaching human warship. The human science team sent their distress signal before being captured, Temis continued. Based on these traffic patterns, I believe the pirates have been holding them prisoner on our fourth moon for 3 weeks. Everything suddenly made terrible sense. The human warship was not coming to attack Trellans. It was coming to rescue humans. The message telling them to stand down was not a threat to the colony. It was a warning to whoever held the prisoners. How many pirate vessels are currently in our system? Pila asked. Temis checked the sensor logs. 3 ships broke orbit from the fourth moon approximately 20 minutes ago. They are positioning themselves between the approaching human vessel and the moon. The pirates knew they had been found. They were preparing to fight rather than surrender their prisoners, and the Trellan colony sat directly in the potential. Battle zone. Pila made a decision that would change everything. Send a message to the human warship immediately. Tell them we have discovered the situation with their people. Tell them the pirates are not associated with the Trellan government. Tell them we were deceived. Governor, this admission reveals corruption in our own administration. I know, send it anyway. The humans deserve the truth. Temis composed the message and transmitted it on all available frequencies. They had no way of knowing if the humans would receive it, believe it, or care about Trellan innocence when their people had suffered for 3 weeks. The long-range sensors showed the human warship Retribution dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Hedros system. The vessel appeared smaller than expected, but moved with predatory grace. Its weapons systems came online, bathing the surrounding space in targeting radiation. The 3 pirate ships activated their own weapons and began broadcasting threats. They demanded safe passage in exchange for the lives of the human prisoners. They claimed Council protection. They insisted that attacking them would be considered an act of war. Pila watched the screen and waited for the human response. Her people's fate now rested in the hands of a species known for their aggressive nature and their refusal to follow established rules. She could only hope that humans valued truth over revenge. The sensors showed weapons charging on both sides. In moments, the space around Hedros 7 would become a battlefield. Vreka had been a pirate for 30 years, and in that time he had learned one important rule. When someone stronger came looking for trouble, you ran. You did not fight. You did not negotiate. You grabbed whatever loot you could carry and disappeared into the black. But running required time, and the human warship had arrived too fast. His flagship, Crimson Shard, hung in space between the fourth moon and the approaching human vessel. Two other pirate ships flanked him, their weapons charged and ready. 6 human prisoners sat locked in his cargo hold, including that irritating scientist woman who kept trying to signal for help. "Captain, the humans are not responding to our transmissions." His communications officer sounded nervous. The entire crew was nervous. They had heard stories about human military capabilities, though most assumed the stories were exaggerated. Vreka studied the approaching warship on his tactical display. It was smaller than he expected. His 3 ships collectively outmassed the human vessel by a considerable margin. The orbital defense platforms they had secretly installed around the fourth moon gave them additional firepower. Numbers were on his side. He just needed to convince the humans of that fact. "Broadcast again. Tell them we have their people. Tell them any attack will result in the prisoners being spaced." Vreka's voice carried the practiced confidence of someone who had bluffed his way out of difficult situations before. The human ship Retribution continued its approach in silence. No response to their threats, no attempt at negotiation, just steady, methodical movement toward the fourth moon. Vreka felt the first trickle of real fear. Humans were supposed to care about their own people. They were supposed to negotiate, make deals, pay ransoms. That was how this always worked. Then the human transmission came through. A single voice, female, speaking in clear galactic standard with that odd human accent. "Release the prisoners. You have 5 minutes." That was it, no threats. No list of demands, no diplomatic protocol, just a simple statement and a time limit. Vreka laughed and his crew joined him. 5 minutes or what? 1 ship against 3 plus orbital defenses. The humans were either stupid or suicidal. "Tell them we want safe passage out of this system and full immunity from prosecution. Tell them they have 5 minutes to agree or their people die." Vreka leaned back in his command chair, certain he had control of the situation. The human ship did not respond. 4 minutes passed in tense silence. Vreka's crew began making nervous jokes about human arrogance. The weapons officer confirmed all systems were ready. The tactical display showed optimal firing solutions for their opening salvo. At exactly 5 minutes, the human ship moved. Vreka had fought in dozens of space battles. He understood combat tactics and weapons ranges. He knew how ships maneuvered and how long it took to achieve firing solutions. His experience told him they had at least 30 seconds before the engagement truly began. The Retribution covered the distance in 4 seconds. Its acceleration was impossible. Ships did not move like that. The gravitational forces should have turned the crew into paste against the back wall, yet the human vessel darted forward with precision that defied physics. 4 simultaneous shots, not energy beams that took time to travel. Solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Railgun rounds that crossed the distance faster than Vreka's sensors could track them. The first round hit Crimson Shard's main weapon array and vaporized it. The second destroyed their engine core without breaching the containment field. The ship went dead in space, completely disabled but intact. The other 2 pirate vessels suffered identical fates, primary weapons destroyed, engines crippled, life support untouched, all in the span of 47 seconds. Vreka sat in his command chair, staring at status displays that showed his ship was now nothing more than a drifting hulk. His crew panicked around him, shouting questions he could not answer. The human ship had not been damaged. It had not even slowed down. It simply executed its attack with surgical precision and then stopped, waiting. A new transmission came through. "Prisoner transfer begins now. Resistance means death." Vreka finally understood. These humans did not negotiate. They did not make threats. They stated facts and then followed through with absolute certainty. When they said they were coming, they came. When they gave you 5 minutes, they meant exactly 5 minutes. His second officer looked at him with panic in his eyes. "Captain, what do we do?" Vreka had built his reputation on being smart enough to know when he was beaten. "We give them their people." But the payment we were promised for the human technology, the information we gathered, means nothing if we're dead. Vreka stood and moved toward the cargo hold. "Open the cells, prepare the prisoners for transfer." The human boarding craft approached Crimson Shard like mechanical predators. Vreka watched them dock with his ship and felt his courage crumble. If the humans fought this efficiently in space combat, he did not want to discover how they fought in close quarters. Meanwhile, on Hedros 7, Governor Pila stood at her window and watched the brief battle through magnified displays. The entire engagement had lasted less than a minute. 3 pirate ships disabled without being destroyed. Precision that seemed impossible. Gren, watching from Vigilance Eye Station, felt his understanding of human military doctrine shift fundamentally. They did not seek glory or honor in combat. They did not follow the elaborate rules that governed warfare among council species. They identified their objective, eliminated obstacles, and achieved results. Rilke checked her sensors and confirmed what everyone else was seeing. "Commander, the human ship is opening a communication channel to Governor Pila." The human voice came through, professional and calm. "We apologize for the disturbance. We are here to retrieve our people. The pirates will be detained and turned over to proper authorities. Hedros 7 is not in danger from us." Pila responded immediately. "We understand, Commander. We have sent you all information regarding the pirate presence in our system. We were unaware they were using our space." "We believe you, Governor. Stand by for further communication once our people are secure." The channel closed. Pila turned to Temis with relief flooding through her crystalline body. The humans had not come for war. They had come for justice, and they had delivered it in less than 1 minute. Inside the disabled pirate flagship, Dr. Ann Walsh heard the commotion spreading through the corridors. 3 weeks of captivity had taught her to recognize the different sounds of pirate activity. This was panic. Something had gone very wrong for their captors, which meant something had gone very right for the prisoners. She shared her cell with 5 other humans, 2 engineers named Robert and Diane, a botanist called Oscar, a pilot named Lisa, and a medic, Yuki Sato, who had kept everyone's spirits up despite their deteriorating conditions. The pirates had treated them poorly, not quite torture but close enough. Interrogations about human technology, threats about what would happen if they did not cooperate, minimal food and water, cold temperatures that made sleeping difficult. Anne had spent 3 weeks sending covert signals whenever possible, tiny electromagnetic pulses embedded in the ship's normal radiation signature. She had no way of knowing if anyone received them, but she kept trying, because she knew one fundamental truth about humanity. They did not leave their people behind. "Something's happening," Robert said from his position near the cell door. "I can hear weapons fire in the distance." Anne stood and moved closer, pressing her ear against the cold metal. The sounds were definitely combat, but brief, controlled bursts rather than chaotic fighting. Then silence. The cell door opened suddenly. Vreka stood there with 2 armed guards, looking more frightened than Anne had ever seen him. The Carthian pirate captain grabbed her arm and pulled her out of the cell. "Your friends have made a terrible mistake," Vreka hissed, dragging her toward the command center. "They think they can attack us without consequences." Anne did not resist. She had learned that fighting only resulted in pain. But her mind worked quickly, analyzing the situation. If Vreka was using her as a shield, it meant the human rescue force had him cornered. The command center showed scenes of controlled chaos, dead systems, offline weapons, a ship that had been defeated so quickly that most of the crew still looked confused about what had happened. 4 armored figures appeared at the entrance to the command center. human combat suits designed for efficiency rather than intimidation. They moved with coordinated precision that spoke of extensive training. The lead figure stopped when he saw Vreka holding Anne. The situation was a classic hostage scenario. Pirates surrounded them, weapons drawn. The logical response would be negotiation. Lieutenant Cole did not negotiate. He assessed the situation in 3 seconds and made a decision based on what he knew about the prisoner. "Dr. Walsh, do you trust me?" His voice came through the external speakers of his suit. Anne met his eyes through the helmet visor. She did not know this man, but she knew he was human. She knew he had come to save her. That was enough. "Yes." When I count to 3, drop to the floor. 1, 2, 3. Anne threw herself down without hesitation. Cole moved forward simultaneously, covering the distance between them faster than Vreka could react. His armored hand caught the pirate's wrist and twisted. The weapon clattered away. The other 3 human soldiers moved in perfect coordination with their lieutenant. Non-lethal rounds fired with precise targeting. Pirates dropped, stunned but alive. The entire engagement lasted 8 seconds. Cole helped Anne to her feet. "Are you injured, Doctor?" "Nothing serious. The others are in a cell down the corridor." "Guide us there." Anne led them through the ship, which had become eerily quiet. They passed pirate crew members who sat with their hands behind their heads, already secured by other human soldiers who had boarded from different entry points. The other prisoners cried with relief when they saw Anne and the rescue team. Yuki immediately began checking everyone for injuries despite being weak from 3 weeks of poor nutrition. Robert looked at the human soldiers with amazement. "How many of you are there?" 16 aboard this ship, another team securing the other 2 pirate vessels. Cole's tone was matter-of-fact, as if rescuing hostages was routine business. They returned to the boarding craft within 12 minutes of the initial breach. The efficiency was startling. No wasted time. No unnecessary conversation, just professional execution of a well-planned operation. Anne found herself aboard the Retribution, standing in the medical bay while doctors examined her. The ship's interior was utilitarian. Clean lines, practical design, everything built for function rather than comfort. Commander Hale entered the medical bay once the doctors confirmed Anne was stable. The commander was a woman in her mid-40s with gray in her hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. "Good to have you back, Doctor. Medical is ready to care for your team." Hale's greeting was brief but genuine. Anne felt tears threatening to fall. "Thank you for not waiting for council authorization." "We don't need permission to protect our own." Hale's statement carried absolute conviction. "Your signals helped us locate you faster. The ship schematics you transmitted were particularly useful. I wasn't sure anyone was receiving them. We picked up the first one 11 days ago, been planning the rescue since then." Hale placed a hand on Anne's shoulder. "You did good, Doctor, kept your team alive and gave us the information we needed." Yuki finished her examination of the other prisoners and approached Hale with a serious expression. "Commander, I kept detailed mental notes on everything that happened during our captivity. The pirates were selling information about human technology to unknown buyers. They also mentioned something about council officials being involved in their operations." Hale's expression hardened. "We suspected as much. Your testimony will help us present evidence to the council." In the detention area of the Retribution, Vreka sat in a cell far more comfortable than the ones he had kept the humans in. Cole stood outside, watching the pirate captain with professional detachment. "Why didn't you kill us?" Vreka finally asked. "You had every right." Cole considered the question for a moment. "Because you're not worth making our people murderers. You'll face justice through proper channels. That's how we operate. Even after what we did to your people. Especially then, we don't let people like you turn us into something we're not." Vreka understood in that moment why humans were so effective. They maintained their principles even when it would be easier to abandon them. They followed their own code regardless of what others did. The Retribution prepared to depart Trellan's space with its recovered personnel and detained pirates, leaving behind questions that would reshape galactic politics. The Council emergency session convened aboard Vigilance I with representatives from 17 species attending via secure communication channels. Ambassador Quirrell sat at the center position, looking confident despite the circumstances. He had spent 30 years navigating council politics and knew how to deflect blame. Commander Hale joined the session from the Retribution, her image projected onto the main display. She looked calm, almost bored, as if attending emergency sessions was something she did every other day. Quirrell began with his prepared statement. Commander Hale, the Council acknowledges your successful rescue of human personnel. However, your unauthorized military action in protected Council space represents a serious breach of galactic law. We must discuss appropriate consequences. Hale did not defend herself. Instead, she shared a data file with all session participants. Before we discuss consequences, I suggest everyone review this evidence. The file contained communication logs, financial records, and surveillance data covering the past 8 months. Gren opened it on his personal display and felt his blood go cold as he read. The pirate operations in Trellan's space had not been random. Someone had provided them with information about Council patrol schedules. Someone had altered sensor data to hide their presence. Someone had accepted regular payments to ensure they could operate without interference. That someone included 3 Trellan colonial officials, 2 Vigilance I station personnel, and 1 Council oversight coordinator. Ambassador Quirrell's face went pale as he realized his name appeared in the financial records. Not as a direct collaborator, but as someone who had received gifts and favors from entities connected to the pirates. He had ignored 17 separate reports about suspicious activity in Trellan's space over 6 months. This evidence is circumstantial, Quirrell protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Hale's expression did not change. We have audio recordings of your conversations with Trellan officials where you advised them to ignore irregularities. We have financial transfers to your personal accounts from shell companies operated by the pirate syndicate. We have communication logs showing you deliberately delayed Council fleet deployment to the Trellan sector. Gren stood, interrupting the proceedings. Commander Hale, how long have you known about this corruption? Our intelligence services began investigating 4 months ago when we noticed patterns of missing ships in this region. When Dr. Walsh's team went missing, we confirmed our suspicions. Hale pulled up additional data. The pirates were not just holding hostages. They were gathering technology samples and selling information to rival factions. Governor Pila's voice came through the communication channel. She had been silent until now, processing the revelation that her own government harbored traitors. Commander Hale, the Trellan people had no knowledge of this conspiracy. Our officials betrayed us. We know, Governor, that's why we directed our action against the pirates rather than Trellan assets. Hale's tone softened slightly. Your government is as much a victim here as our people were. Rilke, sitting at her sensor station, reviewed old data with fresh understanding. She found dozens of sensor readings that had been modified or deleted. Someone on Vigilance I had been helping the pirates avoid detection for months. She stood and addressed the council session. Commander Gren, I have identified the station personnel who altered our sensor logs. They have been transferring data to external sources and receiving payments through anonymous channels. Gren ordered immediate detention of the suspects. His station had been compromised under his watch, and the shame of that failure would haunt him. But right now, he needed to focus on preventing further damage. Ambassador Quirrell made one last attempt to control the situation. This evidence suggests corruption among lower-level officials. It does not justify human military action without authorization. Hale leaned forward, her patience clearly exhausted. Ambassador 6 human. Citizens were held captive for 3 weeks while your office ignored multiple reports of their distress signal. You told Governor Pila that proper procedures required 6 days to deploy a rescue force. My people did not have 6 days. They had hours. Council protocols exist for good reasons. Council protocols failed. They failed the Trellans who unknowingly hosted pirates. They failed my people who sent distress signals that were buried. They failed every species who trusted the Council to maintain order. Hale's voice remained calm, but her words cut like knives. We followed the highest law. We protected innocent lives. Smaller species representatives began speaking in support of the human position. They had all experienced situations where council bureaucracy moved too slowly to help. They understood the frustration of watching proper procedures fail real people. A representative from the Fennec species spoke. The humans acted when the council could not. Perhaps we should examine why rapid response is impossible under current protocols rather than punishing those who filled the gap. Gren saw his opportunity. I propose a formal investigation into pirate operations across all council-protected sectors. I further propose we establish rapid response protocols for emergency situations. The session erupted into debate. Some species supported reform, others defended existing procedures. Ambassador Quirrell tried to redirect conversation, but his credibility had evaporated. Governor Pila made her decision. The Trellan government will cooperate fully with investigations into our officials' corruption. We will provide all requested data and testimony. We will also pursue direct diplomatic relations with humanity to discuss mutual security concerns. This announcement shocked many representatives. Direct bilateral agreements outside council mediation were rare. It suggested Trellans no longer fully trusted council protection. Hale concluded her statement. The Retribution will remain in Trellan space for 2 weeks to assist with security while this situation resolves. We are bringing 3 additional vessels with humanitarian aid and engineering support for the Trellan people. This is not military occupation. This is cooperation between species who share common interests. Quirrell realized he had lost control entirely. The session dissolved into smaller discussions about reform proposals and investigation procedures. His career was finished. The corruption he had enabled through negligence would be exposed completely. Gren approached Hale privately through a secure channel after the session ended. Commander, why did humans risk so much for 6 individuals? Hale's answer was simple. Because if we don't value each person, we value nothing. Every human matters, every life counts. That's not just policy, that's who we are. The investigation that followed would expose corruption in 17 council sectors and lead to the largest reform of galactic governance in 2 centuries. But it started with 1 warship, 1 rescue mission, and 1 species that refused to abandon its people. 2 weeks had passed since the Retribution arrived in Trellan space like an avenging angel. Now 3 additional human vessels orbited Hedros 7, their hulls marked with civilian designations rather than military codes. Engineering ships, medical frigates, supply haulers. The humans had come not to conquer but to help rebuild. Governor Pila stood in the main docking bay watching human personnel disembark. She had agreed to this assistance with careful consideration. Accepting help meant admitting weakness. But the Trellan government had been weakened by corruption, and pretending otherwise would only cause more harm. Chief Engineer Rodriguez was the first to greet her. The human woman was shorter than Pilo expected, with rough hands and an easy smile that seemed genuine. Governor, thank you for allowing us to assist. We've reviewed your mining infrastructure and have some suggestions if you're interested. I appreciate your offer, Chief Rodriguez. However, Trellans prefer to maintain our independence in such matters. Pila's response was polite but firm. Rodriguez nodded with understanding. Completely fair. How about this instead? We share our observations, you share yours, and we work together on anything that seems mutually beneficial. No pressure, no obligations. This approach surprised Pila. She had expected humans to impose their solutions, as council advisors often did. Instead, they offered genuine collaboration. That would be acceptable. Over the following days, Trellin and human workers formed mixed teams. The humans did not try to replace Trellin methods. They asked questions. Why do you use this mining technique? What are the advantages of your crystal-based sensors? How do you process these? Particular minerals. The Trellins, in turn, learned about human engineering philosophy. Humans valued adaptability over perfection. They built redundant systems and planned for failure points. Where Trellins designed for elegant efficiency, humans designed for resilience. Temis found himself working alongside a human engineer named Bowen. The young man had a habit of humming while he worked, which Temis found oddly comforting. They were analyzing structural stress patterns in the main mining shaft. Your calculations are more precise than ours, Bowen observed, reviewing Temis's work. How do you achieve that level of accuracy? Our crystalline nervous systems process mathematical relationships intuitively. It is simply how we think. Temis studied Bowen's alternative approach. Your method accounts for more variables, even if less precisely. It is broader in scope. Different species, different strengths, Bowen grinned. Imagine what we could accomplish by combining both approaches. This sentiment echoed throughout the collaborative efforts. Humans brought creativity and adaptability. Trellins brought precision and patience. Together, they solved problems neither could have addressed alone. Dr. Walsh returned to her research with renewed purpose. The Trellin government had granted her full access to their biological archives. What she discovered amazed her. Trellin crystalline biology could process certain radiation types that were harmful to most carbon-based life. This had significant implications for medical treatments and deep space exploration. Governor, this research could benefit dozens of species, Anne explained during a presentation to Trellin leadership. Your unique physiology isn't just interesting, it's potentially revolutionary for medicine and space travel. Pila considered the implications. For generations, we have kept to ourselves. We assumed other species would not value our contributions. You assumed wrong. The galaxy is better when everyone shares their gifts. Anne's enthusiasm was infectious. Would you be willing to collaborate on formal research partnerships? The Trellin Council debated for hours before approving the partnership. It marked a fundamental shift in their approach to galactic society. No longer would they hide in their corner of space. They had value to offer, and the humans had shown them how to share it. Meanwhile, the captured pirates faced justice. The council conducted formal trials with testimony from the rescued humans and evidence provided by human intelligence services. Vreka and his crew received sentences in rehabilitation facilities designed to reform rather than simply punish. During his trial, Vreka made an unexpected statement. I spent 30 years taking what I wanted from those weaker than myself. Then I encountered humans who were stronger but chose not to destroy me. I don't understand them, but I respect them. The reforms to council emergency response protocols progressed rapidly. Smaller species who had suffered from slow response times strongly supported changes. The new system allowed rapid deployment for verified emergencies without requiring weeks of bureaucratic approval. Gren led the reform initiative, driven by guilt over his own delayed response. He established regional rapid response networks where species could request immediate assistance from authorized partners. Humans became the first non-council species granted full authorization. Rilke volunteered for the Joint Task Force investigating pirate operations across Council space. Working alongside human intelligence officers, she discovered talent she never knew she possessed. Her analytical mind excelled at finding patterns in complex data. 6 months after the Retribution first appeared in Trellin space, Governor Pila stood before the Council Assembly to announce a formal alliance between Trellins and humans. The agreement was revolutionary in its simplicity. Article 1, Mutual Defense Against Criminal Elements. Article 2, Free Trade in Minerals, Technology, and Knowledge. Article 3, Cultural Exchange and Joint Research Initiatives. Most importantly, the alliance was bilateral. No council mediation, no bureaucratic oversight, just two species agreeing to work together based on demonstrated trust and shared values. Other species began approaching humanity with similar proposals. The humans accepted some and declined others, always maintaining clear standards. They would partner with species who valued justice, honesty, and mutual respect. They would not compromise their principles for political advantage. Commander Hale returned to Hedros 7 one final time before departing. Governor Pila hosted a ceremony honoring the human crew. Trellans presented crystalline sculptures to each rescued prisoner, works of art that would last for centuries. When it came time for Hale to speak, she kept her remarks brief. "We didn't come here as saviors. We came for our people. What we found was a system that needed fixing and friends willing to help fix it. The galaxy becomes better when we hold ourselves accountable and support each other." The Retribution departed Trellan space, leaving behind a liaison team to continue cooperation efforts. As the warship accelerated away, Rilke watched from her sensor station on Vigilance Eye. "They changed everything," she said quietly to Gren. The commander nodded. "They showed us that doing the right thing matters more than following the comfortable path. We should have learned that lesson long ago." The galaxy had indeed changed. Humans had demonstrated that power combined with principle created something stronger than either alone. Their willingness to act decisively when needed, balanced by their refusal to abuse that power, earned them respect across multiple species. In the years that followed, human-Trellan cooperation became a model for bilateral alliances. The Joint Task Force freed hundreds of prisoners and dismantled criminal networks across 17 sectors. Dr. Walsh's research led to medical breakthroughs that saved countless lives. And whenever the sensors detected unusual signatures approaching at impossible speeds, Rilke no longer felt fear. She felt hope, because she knew that humans came not to conquer but to stand beside those who needed them.